we can play it. You can play it on demand after this session. If you can also set your Zoom name to the specified format, so you can use your name and then add your pronouns if you're comfortable, and then also your organization. You can also comment in the chat where you're coming from so that everyone knows the breadth of our participants. As I mentioned earlier, if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone and also turn on your camera so that we can have a more interactive session. You can also use emojis and your raise hand function if you have questions throughout the webinar. If you have questions, you can either utilize the Q&A function or comment on the chat box. So usually during the Q&A portion, we select some of the questions and the speakers answer it live. You can also use it to add comments, share your insights, or if you're having technical difficulties, please do let us know by commenting it on the chat box in the Zoom function. This session is conducted in English, French, Khmer, and Bahasa Indonesia. And since we want this space to be very productive, let's make sure that it's a safe space for everyone. And let's ask questions, learn, and also share our insights. So just to walk you through the interpretation function, so usually at the bottom part of your Zoom account or your Zoom interface, you have the interpretation logo. So you have to see this globe function. And then when you click it, you just enter the channel that you're most comfortable with. So you can either see English, French when you go there, just to make sure that it's accessible for everyone. So now, before we go to our first lecture, I'd like to start with this very short icebreaker. So hopefully everyone can go to this website, www.kahoot.it, and then you can enter this pin, 6824596. Or you can also scan this QR code so that it leads you to the website. So let me just pull the website up. Okay. So hopefully you're able to enter the Kahoot link that I shared earlier. So you should be able to see this interface. Okay, so I see some of you are already here. So we'll just wait for a few more seconds before we officially start. So again, you can enter using this QR code and just enter the game pin. So thank you, Jeff, also for sharing the pin and the Kahoot link here. Okay, so this will be very easy, especially if some of you are already familiar with One Health. So if you would recall, this is actually our second webinar focusing on One Health. So this is just a review of what we've learned in the first webinar. Okay, so I think there are a lot of participants already joining in. So I think we can start already, if that's okay with everyone. So let me also turn on the sound so that it becomes more interactive. Okay, so let's start. So the idea here is you just need to select the correct answer. So the first question is, in the context of One Health, what is the significance of zoonotic diseases? So do they only affect animals? Blue, they cannot be transmitted to humans. Yellow requires collaboration between human, animal, and envi health sectors. And then lastly, they are only relevant in tropical climates. See more answers by clicking on the first. Okay, so the correct answer is yellow. So requires a collaboration between human, animal, and envi health sector. So I think that's pretty easy. Most of you got the correct answer. Okay, so Marion has very fast hands, followed by Peter and then Ninja. Okay, so the faster that you select the correct answer, the higher the points. So please make sure to enter it as fast as you can. Which of the following is not a component of a successful One Health surveillance system? So red, data sharing among human, animal, and environmental health sectors. Blue, rapid response to disease outbreaks. Yellow, focus on human health data. Green, integrated monitoring of disease trends. Okay, so again, most of you got it correctly. So when we're talking about a One Health surveillance system, it shouldn't focus solely on human health data. All right, so the rest are important components of a surveillance system. Okay, next question. Marion still on the lead. Jeremy is climbing up on the second place, followed by Elsa. When was the WHO pandemic agreement adopted by the World Health Assembly? So was it April 20, 2025, April 25, 2025, May 20, 2024, or May 20, 2025? So this is partly current events since this is just fairly recently. Okay. So I think it's a toss-up between the yellow and the green one, but I'm happy that most of you got it correctly. So it was adopted on May 20, 2025. Okay. Okay, Marion still on the lead.
I'm gonna stop. I feel like it's sitting.
So we'll just count the rank 2. So we'll declare Marion as first place already by this time. Okay, last 2 questions. What does PAB stand for? Pathogen access and biological sharing mechanism, pathogen availability and benefit sharing mechanism. So this is quite tricky. It's just one word difference. This is actually one of the, I think, things that we need to continue the conversation on. Okay, so PAB stands for Pathogen Access and Benefit Sharing Mechanism. So please remember that acronym because it will be discussed, I think, in not only in this webinar, but also in the next conversations on the pandemic agreement. Okay, Rose is taking the lead now. Last question. When is the deadline for the finalization of the PABS system? Is it December 2025, May 2025, May 2026, or December 2026? Last few seconds. Seeing your answers. Okay, so it's May 2026. So that will be next year. All right. So I think a lot of people got confused with this, but it's May 2026. That's the deadline for the finalization of the PAB system. All right. So I think that's the last question. So at third place, we have Ninja. So if you're comfortable, you can reveal yourself in the chat, followed by Jeremy. And then on the first slot was Elsa with 3,824. 3,821 points. All right. So thank you for your active participation in this session. So hopefully that was a good review for you, especially now that we're moving forward with the conversations on the pandemic agreement. So let's go back to our slide. So just to walk you through some of the materials that we've been developing in the past. So we have the Copper Knowledge Hub website here. So you can access it at copper.apcaso.org, or you can also scan the QR code. So it contains all of the recordings as well as the articles made after the session. And we'd also like to share the post-webinar article. So you can scan this QR code to access the latest one from the recent webinar. And then we also have the PPR guide for communities, which you can also access through this QR code. And lastly, we have the compendium of community guides for pandemic preparedness and response. So it contains all of the community guides that we've presented so far. You can access it through the QR code or access it through the link below. All right, so now before we proceed to our keynote message, I'd like to invite Jeff, the APCASO Program Manager and the ACT AP Coordinator, to deliver the opening message. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you so much, RJ, and hello, everyone. It's great to see again another huge number of participants joining us for today's lessons 9. Again, like what RJ said, this is the ninth in the series, and another exciting topic that we have for today, especially post pandemic accord, as you saw in the Kahoot 7 days ago. Just a week ago, we had the pandemic accord adopted by more than 120 member states during the World Health Assembly. That is a landmark decision coming from the World Health Assembly, especially given that this atmosphere where multilateralism and the cooperation between governments and countries are being put into question, not to mention the decreasing and declining funding for global health. So this pandemic accord does not only represent the cooperation between the governments, but the enthusiasm to continue supporting global health, especially in in the context of pandemic. I have been diagnosed with COVID a few days ago. This is my third day, and on my fifth day, I have to test again. So this also shows that even if the pandemic declaration on COVID has been lifted, COVID is still around, and there's still an increasing number of cases roaming around us anywhere in the globe. This particular lessons is also very interesting in the sense that of the many highlights of the pandemic accord, one of the key highlights that I would like to share with everyone is the inclusion and the recognition of One Health as an important aspect of pandemic prevention. It's been 2.5 years since we've fought, debated around the importance of pandemic prevention in the earlier INB, in the earlier intergovernmental body negotiations on the pandemic accord, but the basic prevention on pandemics has almost left the room. But now we're here 2.5 years later with One Health as one of the key highlights of pandemic accord. So for this lessons 9, we would like to share with you within this webinar what pandemic prevention is about within the context of pandemic accord and what One Health really is. So it's not only an orientation or a revisitation to what we learned from the previous lessons, but also putting into context now that we are moving forward into One Health within the context of the pandemic accord and how we can participate in the pandemic accord implementation at the country level. Like what RJ said, while the pandemic accord has already been adopted at the World Health Assembly, it has to be legislated and it has to be adopted by the member states themselves. So we need to make sure that this does not only become a document in an intergovernmental space, but a document that we can utilize at our respective countries. The same way that WHO will be implementing and our countries are implementing through the tobacco control. The pandemic accord is the second landmark legislation that is legally binding, and countries should be able to report it. So, again, welcome to Lessons 9, and I hope you learn a lot from our esteemed speakers for today, and I'm very excited to listen to them as well. Thank you so much, and back to you, RJ.
Thank you, Jeff, for that very relevant message. And for this webinar, we'll be dividing the session into two parts. So for the first part, we'll have a discussion by Marisa Per, followed by discussion by Marion Acelos. So for the first one, we will be talking about basic concepts on One Health and the key aspects of pandemic prevention and One Health. So just to introduce Marisa. So Marisa Per is an epidemiologist and the deputy director of ASTRE, the Integrated Health Research Unit in CIRAD. She specializes in the evaluation of health surveillance systems in developed and developing countries, including community-based systems in emerging zoonotic risks and in public-private partnerships. She provides expertise to international organizations, namely the FAO, the Pandemic Fund, the World Bank, and the World Organization for Animal Health. She is also the co-founder and global science leader of the PREZODE initiative, or the Preventing Zoonotic Disease Emergence. She drives an international change in paradigm towards increased prevention of health risks using a bottom-up approach. So I'll give the floor now to Marisa to deliver her message. Over to you, Marisa.
Thank you very much. Thank you, RG. Thanks you all. Thank you, Apkazo, and all the organizer of this webinar for inviting me to discuss about this exciting event, which is now the post-pandemic ACCOR adoption. And you've mentioned it, Jeff, that there's been a lot of fighting and advocacy to ensure that prevention and One Health would remain and would be meaningful in the pandemic accord. And so I will not go back on who I am, because thank you for this very extensive introduction. But I would like to acknowledge my colleague Nina Jamal, who's with us today as well. And she's the head of pandemics and campaign strategy in Forpose, and she's been very instrumental in pushing for this remaining of meaningful prevention and One Health statement in the pandemic agreement with CSOs, other civil society organizations, and NGOs. And that shows how working collectively and engagements of CSO at this level of governance and advocacy actually works. And I would like to really acknowledge that work and emphasize this, because we need to continue the work now for its practical implementation in the field. So next slide, please. So I just want to go back to what One Health means, because we think it's important to remind ourselves. First, because this definition that has been developed by the One Health High-Level Expert Panel, which is an advisory panel for the quadripartite last 3 years ago, has now been officially endorsed in the Pandemic Accord. So it's recognized internationally and by the countries. This definition is very inclusive and integrative. So of course, One Health is an integrated and unifying approach that aims to sustainably balance and optimize health of people, animals, and ecosystem. We all know what One Health means in terms of recognizing the interdependency of health between human, animals, and environment. But what we less know is the last 2 paragraphs of the definition, and I think it's very important to emphasize it here, is that this approach is a way of working, a way of thinking that needs to mobilize multiple sectors, discipline, and communities at varying levels of society to work together to be able to tackle health threats and threat to ecosystems. So it is taking health in its wider context of ecosystems. And this definition also recognizes that doing that, we need to make sure that basic needs are still addressed, and that everything we will do will not have negative impact or needs to be considered in terms of the need for clean water, energy, air, safe and nutritious food, and also taking action on climate change. So this all contributes to sustainable development. One Health is the way of working, a way of thinking to contribute to sustainable development, beyond just thinking of the health itself. Next slide, please. So One Health is really pushing the boundaries, and its inclusion in legally binding documents and policy is needed to push the agenda of global health policy. So we are moving from disease control and post-outbreak policies, so that means like reacting to crisis, to really tackling the root cause. And this is a key for equity, because this is where working on the root cause can support the most vulnerable population that will be the most affected by crisis and preventing that. And no one is safe until everyone is safe when we take this into consideration. It's also moving forward from policies, definition and implementation in silos towards collaboration. So human health cannot exist in isolation, and we've seen it with the definition. It is impacting on other sector, and other sector is highly impacting on human health. It's also pushing us to move from an anthropocentric definition of health to an ecocentric approach, like looking at what we are in this wider ecosystem. It's also moving from health seen as a financial burden to health seen as an investment, not only for humans, but the entire ecosystem, environment, and the planet. And also, last but not least, it is pushing us to move from a vertical approach to disease management. That means like looking at single disease issues to strengthening health systems as a whole of society approach. So this is our best change to reach equity. And this concept, as it has been said, but it's important to emphasize, is now, for the first time, widely and officially recognized by all country members of the World Health Assembly on the 20th of May, so last week, as part of the pandemic accord. Thank you. Next slide. So what is in the pandemic accord in terms of that? So the accord states that countries need to develop comprehensive multi-sectorial national prevention strategy via One Health. They need to have a clear scope on what prevention entails. They will need to work on prioritization of activity, risk, and settings according to their own context. To prevent disease transmission between animal-human spillover and spillback, and also addressing the drivers of outbreaks and factors that increase risk of pandemics. So working at the root cause as we've just seen it. And that will imply taking measures aimed at prevention at source, including safe and responsible management of farm, wild, and companion animals. Next slide. What the agreement says as well is that effective strategy needs to be in line with the One Health approach, but also in line with commonly agreed guidelines. So that means that it has to enable and being enabled and implemented through formal coordination across sectors. So words like coordinated multi-sectoral surveillance, promote collaboration, urge to establish national multi-sectoral coordination mechanism. All of this is in the text. And it also states that this has to be designed with the communities at the front lines of outbreak, so that they own and implement the solution, can prevent, detect, and report outbreaks and protect their livelihoods. And this is very key for the conversation today. It also needs to be informed by risk assessment and multi-sectoral surveillance. Next slide, please. Will need to be enabled through support for implementation, and that includes technical, financial, but also implementing agency support known as intergovernmental organizations. It needs to be informed through an exchange of best practices, promoting coordination and collaboration between countries and promoting knowledge to policy interface. And it also needs to be coherent with international and legal architecture. And that means that there would be a need to identify and addressing gaps across existing strategies and looking at science versus practice, strengthening and enhancing cooperation among relevant legal instruments. So what does it mean in practice? All this is in the text, and that means that we will need to act on it, and we will need to act together, and you will be in the front line of that. Prevention starts at the community level. So prevention at the source in a One Health approach is now in a legally binding instrument for the first time. We've said that many times, but it's worthwhile to emphasize it again. Prevention means risk reduction, early warning, and quick response to be able to prevent any emerging events that can arise at the animal-human environment interface. And that includes addressing the drivers, risk drivers, and practices, which are quite wide because it's all... sorry, can you
Maaf,
hear me?
apakah ada yang berbicara?
Sorry, I'm hearing some...
Let me just check.
Shall I continue?
Yes,
can you
please. We're just
yeah.
trying to fix the interpretation.
Okay, you tell me when I start again.
Okay, I think we're good. Sorry, Marisa, please go ahead.
No problem, no problem. So I was talking about the drivers of pandemics, and that is all what human impact on nature, such as agricultural practices, land use, animal breeding, but all the needs for socio and economics livelihood. And communities are at the front line. They need to be empowered and engaged in the co-design of solution and health strategy. And civil society organization role would be key for this, for success. Next slide, please. What does it mean? It means also that collaboration and coordination is essential. Policy decision will be based on knowledge and scientific evidence from the field, and that will require multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary collaboration, of course. Support for implementation will be produced, guidelines, technical tools, etc., and regulation. Regional and international collaboration will be promoted. That will include strengthening One Health governance and policy. And permanent dialogue between society, science, and policy is key for success of all this, including at all level and locally. And civil society organization will need to be engaged in this One Health governance at all levels, local, national, regional, and international. Sorry, so there is actions that are already ongoing in your groups and in work like program such as Copper, what APCASO and colleagues are doing. And there is other things at higher level that is happening as well. So the quadripartite has launched a One Health Governance Community of Practice where CSOs needs to play a role. It's not excluding those at all. And that will be presented just after my presentation by Mario. And what we are doing in our initiative, in PRESOD initiative, we're also looking at the enablers and barriers for CSO engagement in this One Health governance at all level, because we need to know why it is happening or not happening and how we can support you to get more power on that. Next slide, please. So just a few words on PRESOD. What is PRESOD and who are we? So PRESOD is a coalition. It is a collaboration. And it is a One Health coalition that is promoting prevention in a bottom-up approach that has been launched just post-COVID. It's a science-led one. And we realized at that time that we needed to give a bigger voice to local intervention and success, to local innovations. So it's a community of more than 250 institutional members, including CSOs, NGOs, but also academics, research, government representative, and technical departments. And we also engage politically with governments to ensure that any action that you will be implementing in the field, our members will be implementing, will be sustainable and taken on into national policies. So we have 29 governments engaged at the moment. So PRESOD is following a One Health approach, and its strategic agenda is promoting as a transversal pillar, the foundational pillar, engagement of all actors, including communities, and also co-design of policy and One Health governance strengthening. Next slide, please. So what can PRESOD do in practice to support you? So as I said, remember, PRESOD is not only us, me or CIRAD, it's 250 institutions worldwide covering 88 countries that is working currently on operational projects in the ground in 15 countries and different world regions to promote this prevention in a One Health approach. PRESOD supports the co-development of community-based surveillance in a One Health approach, and we've got success story in different countries. So that could be a sharing of experience and also engaging with you and the work you're doing with the CLM or the CEG already to be able to strengthen these synergies. PRESOD is supporting the One Health platform development and strengthening both at national and regional levels. And we also have like project and success story that can be shared. And there will be some presentation of this community-based surveillance by our colleague from Vietnam actually today. And PRESOD is also providing strengthening of competencies by One Health training and innovative engagement tools. We're working with different actors to develop serious game, for example, to engage community, a bit similar as what RG just did at the introduction of this webinar, but being able to do that in the field with our communities. And also, PRESOD is supporting this society science policy dialogue space at different level, local. We have example in Senegal, and international level with the working group with the World Organization of Animal Health. And I just want to emphasize that within this work, which is quite new, but we are engaging with media for training on prevention and One Health because we've seen the pivotal role that media is playing when there is a pandemic and a crisis, and they really need to be engaged because they are also a voice to the community. And on that note, I will stop there and thank you very much for your attention. and open up the floor for discussion and question later on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Marisa, for that very brief yet very compact presentation on One Health. No? So it was like a throwback from our first webinar, but with a lot of add-ons and new insights with the pandemic agreement now signed. And I'd just like to walk you through the different points that Marisa mentioned. So she mentioned that One Health is an approach towards sustainable development. She also described the changes in happening in a global health policy. Now we're seeing shifts from very reactive, siloed approaches to broader systems-oriented and proactive approach when we talk about pandemics. And she also outlined the different effective approaches that rests on a strong support from different sectors, a multi-sectoral action. We also need to make use of the best available evidence to guide our action and also be mindful of the coherence with the existing legal frameworks so that it becomes effectively implemented. And towards the end, she mentioned also the importance of community engagement, civil society engagement at various levels of governance. And yeah, Karine also placed here how to join a Prezode network. So if you're interested, you can also get in touch with Karine or Marisa or any colleagues from Prezode. So thank you, Marisa, for that very insightful presentation. I'd also like to remind our speakers to speak slowly. And that's also a reminder for me because some of our participants are having challenges, especially if it's going too fast. And we want, of course, the best possible insights to be shared. All right. So let's try to speak slowly during our presentation so that our translators can keep up. So now I'd like to turn it over to Marion Celos from the Food and Agriculture Organization, who will be sharing with us a presentation on the Community of Practice on One Health governance. Over to you, Marion.
Thank you. So oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'd like to thank you all for giving us a space to present the quadripartite community of practice, and specifically to Marisa and Nina, as we are hoping to cooperate closely with Prezode. I'm Marion Solos. I'm a One Health officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization, and I'm the focal point for the quadripartite secretariat. What is the quadripartite? The quadripartite is an alliance between 4 organizations. One is the World Health Organization. The pandemic instruments coming was led by them. One is the United Nations Environment Program, focusing on environment health from this side, and one is the World Organization for Animal Health. So the 4 organizations together are working for to provide recommendations and guidance about the One Health approach and prevent the next pandemic. And in this context, we launched the quadripartite community of practice on One Health governance that I will present today. Next, please. Just a short background, as it might be of interest to all. The quadripartite community of practice is actually part of a global project, which is called the One Health Knowledge Nexus. And as you can see on the screen, we have different communities of practice on different topics that can be of interest also to pandemic prevention, preparedness. One could be on information and sharing technologies. One can be on the return on investment. It's also a quadripartite community of practice, which means how, if you invest €1 in the One Health approach, how are you going to gain from this euro invested in 10 years later? So it's evaluating the investment in One Health. We have some on acaricide resistance, some on disease drivers, all of those which might be of interest to you later. Please feel free to join. All of those communities of practice, they have the same goal, which is sharing knowledge and best practices. Next, please. Okay, so I will focus on the quadripartite community of practice on One Health governance. What is this? It's a collaborative platform open to all policymakers, experts, practitioners, stakeholders. We're hoping to share experience among experts, discuss governance challenges, and that's why we want to hear from you, and could develop solutions all together to enhance or strengthen One Health government frameworks and policies. And when we talk about One Health governance, I think it was already clear from Marisa's presentation, but for us, we intend the coordination mechanisms, the legal framework that's behind also, and then the policy implementation. Next, please. So who is it for? Everyone. Please do not feel shy to join
C'est pour la discussion, hein. Moi, je vous écoute,
the
mais
community of practice.
je trouvais pas ça vraiment.
Sorry, let me just mute. Or are we having challenges with the interpretation again?
I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Sorry, Marianne, please go ahead.
No problem. Please do not feel shy to join. We need everyone to join, even if you're not considering yourself as a One Health governance expert, because we all have something to bring to the table. So if you're working specifically on policy, if you're working specifically on the legal side, if you're from an indigenous community, because you already have knowledge of the One Health approach, please join. We can all learn from each other and share your knowledge and the information we have. Why would we like civil society organization to join? Because we think you have more access to the local, regional knowledge. And we want, as it was part of the second part of the One Health definition that Marisa shared with you, One Health cannot be a top-down approach. We need a bottom-up approach. So we need to hear from you guys. We need to hear from what's happening on the field, how you're living One Health, how you can really implement it, even not at a governmental level, but also at a local level. And that's really important to us. I think civil society organizations also have more power in terms of advocacy, because you access different categories of persons, of people. So that would be what you could bring to the table too. And also, and we've seen that that's a way to ensure transparent and inclusive, but also accountability. So because you have this independence that allows you as civil society organization to make sure we held governments or institutions accountable for their promises sometimes. Hopefully often. And maybe also for capacity building. So if we're sharing a tool in that, maybe you can train other communities that you have access to. Next, please. How to join? Okay, so I will put the link in the chat so that everyone can join the community of practice. But you can also scan this QR code. You have to register to join the online community of practice. So you can click on login once you access this page, or register with your email account as an individual or as an association. You just have to create a password and then you'll be able to connect. Next, please. Yeah, that's to say, please register. We have different sections. Please note that this is a work in progress. You can provide comments also on how to improve your community of practice, because we want this to be your space. So for now, we have an introduction section presenting the community of practice. We have different discussions forums in which, for now, for example, people have been sharing examples of good One Health governance mechanisms, or even just events talking about One Health so that we can advocate for the One Health governance. The resources section is to share all the scientific evidence that, as Marisa said, should be informing the policymakers in their policymaking processes. We have webinar recordings. Maybe we could also put this one there with your authorization, Raymond and Jeff. And we have a who is who section, so you can go and look and also network within the community of practice. We have a few different ambitions for the first year. First, we want to make sure we have a comprehensive and a very diverse community of practice. So we would like to ensure we have, for example, indigenous communities represented in the COP. We would have to have all the regions represented. So for now, we have associations, individuals for almost all the regions, but to be honest, we're, for example, missing a bit of Latin America. representation. So we're working on that. And why do we want that? Because we want first to do maybe a mapping of all the One Health governance mechanism or legal framework that are present in cooperation with PRESOD, because we want everyone to be able to access that. We want to have some case studies, best practices shared for everyone, maybe present some tools of One Health governance so that everyone can use them to evaluate their own One Health governance mechanisms. And then we want to use this platform as an advocacy platform to inform policymakers. Next, please. Okay, thank you. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will put my email also in the chat in case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marion, for that presentation. I think it's an excellent walkthrough on what you've been doing at the Committee of Practice, and I see a lot of potential. I think a lot of our participants would be interested in registering. So if you're interested to join, please do click on the link that Marion sent here on the chat, or if you have any questions, you can also send a direct message to Marion through this email. And I think that's very important because as part of civil society, it's important for us to really engage just to make sure that the policies that are being developed at the international space are reflective of our experiences at the local level. All right, so now I'd like to open the floor for questions. First, I'd like to invite, of course, Marisa to join us in this Q&A, as well as Marion. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. All right, so hopefully, okay, so I see that Lizzie is raising her hand, followed by Peter, and then we'll proceed with the question of Olive in the chat afterwards. Lizzie, go ahead.
Great. Thanks, team, for this. So just a quick one. I'm more concerned about the next steps after the adoption of the pandemic treaty. I mean, I know we had 124 in favor, but there were 11 missing, right? So that raises a question. And the fact that the US is actually not bound by this act at all. Now, my question is in terms of course, PABS was an issue, but the financial mechanism, which is supposed to be the body that now runs the financial aspect of the treaty itself. We've seen that the WHO doesn't have money, or its money has also dwindled, and it's because of the Trump administration. How are we going to fully realize this particular treaty, given the fact that they're already slashing their staff and people are going home because there's no money? I feel like we're getting ourselves in more deeper financial issues. And then the next thing was, should we be worried about the votes are not in? Is this something that should be of concern for us? But also, we're talking about a pandemic, a code that has been approved, and it looks like it's a WHO member state sort of a thing. So it's a public sector driven. And the CSO's voice tends to miss. It missed at the beginning when the negotiations were going on, and organizations like Pandemic Action Network, so we tried pushing our voices through. But then how do we make sure in the dwindling funding states that the voice of the CSOs does not miss when they're implementing this particular treaty? Thank you. I'll stop at that.
All right. Thank you, Lizzie. Two very important and relevant questions given the developments now. So first is, what are the next steps in terms of the pandemic agreement, given the various challenges that we're facing now in terms of economic resources? And second is the sustainability of CSO engagement. So any thoughts?
Well, I can try to start addressing. I read more than two questions in that question. I think there were three or four, but let's try to. No, this is a very good question, and I will like to give the floor after I've tried to answer it to my colleague Nina Jamal, who would be much more able to address this issue of the second question about the WHO instruments and how CSOs were recognized in all the negotiation, because she was at the heart of that. If I go back to the next steps, and she might also be able to give you some info on the next step. So at the moment, the pandemic accord would need to be ratified by each country, but this will not happen before the PAPS is being agreed on. And so they've given themselves 1 year to negotiate the PAPs. So there is still a lot of work to do for CSOs and for us to keep on pushing and lobbying and advocacy to ensure that equity is respected, and that the pathogen access and benefit sharing is a success for all. Having said that, it doesn't mean that nothing will happen between now and the agreement on the PAPs, because we need to be instrumental and start working with the governments of the countries that will also start organizing themselves in how to turn this into implementation. And we also need to remember that this is not starting now, because I think we tend to forget that this is starting now for the public health sector a lot. This is starting since the COVID pandemic for the public health sector, but work on prevention and emerging risk has started 20 years ago when there was the first SARS-CoV-1, and with the avian flu threats for many years, there's been a lot of work ongoing in countries. We've done studies showing that there is already a governance in place. There is One Health platforms. They are just not powerful enough. They have just not been empowered enough. And this agreement is giving them the arguments to be more empowered and instrumental in implementation. So we are not starting from nothing, and we can support this because all the present members and other actors, key actors such as FAO and the WHO has been working on this emerging risks for a long time. So even if it's the WHO instrument at the moment, the pandemic treaty, it involves all of us. And as soon as One Health is mentioned, then we need to be there working for this. Regarding the financial issue, I think we are turning around with that, because the One Health approach and prevention is supposed to reduce the cost and to optimize resources. So we should not stop ourselves thinking like finance are being reduced, so we cannot do it. We should think ourselves, finance are being reduced, so we should do it, because this is efficient, and this is where we will be able to really implement meaningful and effective actions, reduce the risk with very little investment. Having said that, yes, resources are needed, but there is still means and ways, and there is still big actors that have resources, like big donors, banks. The pandemic fund is supporting One Health. It's one of the first financial mechanism that is really supporting One Health and prevention. So we should make use of that, and we can support all of you to be able to do that. So can I give the floor to Nina to complete?
Yeah, go ahead. Nina, can we also spotlight Nina and so that she can join us?
Thank you, RJ. Thank you, Marisa. Hi, everyone. So I agree with Marisa, and if we can look at it in two processes. We can look at the implementation, and implementation can begin now. As Marisa is saying, we have certain processes, we have funds, we have member states willing to already start. And the treaty was adopted, so by 124 member states voting in favor and 11 abstaining. So there is strong support, governments committed to implementing. And then the other track is the entry into force track. And here, as Marisa was saying, one of the first steps is the pathogen access and benefit sharing annex. But in the resolution, there are quite a few hooks or additional work that member states agreed to work on. So they are developing this intergovernmental working group. The first task is to finalize the PAPS annex, but then they also want to develop the rules of procedure of the Conference of the Parties, the financial rules, how they will fund the draft budget of the first financial period of the after the entry into force. They're going to also do preparatory work on other articles, like the article on the global supply chain. They're going to look at the financial mechanism that they agreed to. So there's quite a few things that they're going to work on to build and start preparing before entry into force. And all this work, including work on prevention, is going to happen before the entry into force. So they finish the annex, they do the other preparatory work, and then the treaty will be tabled for signature. And then after it's tabled for signature, governments can start ratifying. And once 60 member states ratify, the treaty enters into force. So here we have to calculate maybe 3 or 4 years for them to do that process. And in that time, we can prepare to help member states with the implementation, because we know they want to do it. And then in terms of the participation of civil society, it will be in a similar way. So according to the resolution, it will be in a similar way to what happened in the Intergovernmental Working Group, which means they will allow us to be in the building. They will allow us to make opening statements every day in the morning, depending on their conversations. But there is also another way to contribute, which is the member states asked the Director General to work towards technical input and advice. So technical input and advice is going to be provided to the member states by experts. So if you are an expert on topics tied to prevention, because they mention Article 4.2 on prevention, or on pathogen access and benefit sharing, governments can nominate you, and experts would be selected in line with the WHO regulations for expert advisory panels and committees. So this is also another way to contribute and support member states. And if you have direct contact with your governments, it's always helpful to ask them how they see the process going, what kind of support do they need, what kind of questions do they need answered, because then we can adapt how we're supporting them exactly to their needs.
All right. Thank you, Nina, for that very important insight. So definitely a lot of work still to be done after passing the pandemic agreement. And I think it also opens up a lot of opportunities for civil society to enter either as technical experts or the usual route that we enter in these kinds of spaces. And I think as we are actually also waiting for the ratification of each country, we need to strengthen also the local coalitions that will be adding pressure to our government. And I also like what Marisa earlier, how Marisa framed One Health earlier. So she mentioned that One Health is a strategic investment so that we can optimize very limited resources. All right. So Mariam, would you like to add? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just to echo and compliment, because Marisa's and Nina answer were perfect. I completely aligned with what we're thinking. But for the quadripartite, as we know, One Health, and Marisa said it, so we've been doing One Health for years, okay? But what's missing is sometimes a few components from the environmental health side, and that we need to highlight that to the governments and the governance structure that are already in place. And here I think the CSO are really important and they could have a voice. So also the other components, animal well-being, all of those components that are not considered and though are part of the second definition of One Health that is important to us, CSO have a part to play. And there, I think also the quadripartite and UN organizations, there we have on the funding part, another role to play is to demonstrate, scientifically speaking, why investing in One Health is interesting for the governments. We're not just saying, okay, if you invest in One Health, as Marisa was saying, you're going to earn money because in 10 years you will be spending less. Okay, but maybe we should demonstrate it with some case studies, with some research. And here's something we can do with the help of the community of practice, the PRESERVE initiative, and all the experts working on the subjects. And I think that's something we need then the CSO to relay and advocate for to the governments or any organization, because I'm not talking only about governance mechanism at the national level, but also at the local levels. If first the local level understands that investing in a One Health governance mechanism or structure is interesting, then maybe, the national one will follow. It also can come this way. So I think that's one of the options that we could explore with the COP, with PRESERVE, and all of you guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Marian, for the reminder of giving a higher visibility also to other areas of One Health that are not usually addressed, and also doing our work, our complete staff work as civil society to support our government in making these decisions. I think we can still accommodate one more question. Please go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I have one question and maybe one comment. I was glad that the CSO civil society is very much mentioned during the presentation, and they are looking forward also to participating in the ratification in the member states. But I think it's also, according to the current governance of GHIs, it's good to separate CSOs and communities. because we normally have the two terminologies being used interchangeably. And you find the CSOs are based in the cities and they come to work within the community and they have they are affected completely differently. And so I would be glad if the CSOs and communities are separated, just like it's in Global Fund or in Stop TB Partnership, things like that. Thank you. My question is on the still on the pubs. And we, of course, we all saw that the pubs issue is pending and it was put in the annex. My question is that before the entering into force, parliaments by member states will have to ratify and incorporate the agreement into their laws as a sovereign law. So do we foresee that one happening in the long term, considering that too, as mentioned, we did not include the livestock producers, we did not include the plant producers, and this is an area which is still not well incorporated, still used as a medical interventions other than One Health, leaving out other the fauna and the flora.
All right. Thank you, Peter, for that comment and question. Anyone who would like to take it on? Marian, please go ahead.
I'm not sure. No, sorry. For the PBS, I'm not sure I'm the most. I don't know if my colleague Carmen is still online. Carmen? Oh, so otherwise I see Marisa, maybe.
I would maybe leave this question to Nina because I think that there is like subtlety in the PAPs that's one thing that I would like to emphasize is that I think the issue with the pathogen sharing and access has been discussed a lot in link with One Health because there was understanding of the fact that if One Health was endorsed, that means that that will means more sharing of information beyond just human health pathogens. And that is true. This also linked to that. But I think that the PAPS issue is very much linked to also One Health is pushing a change in paradigm for having concrete action at local level to prevent disease from emerging. The PAPS, the sharing of pathogen and benefits access, is about ensuring access of data from internationally and including the North, where how do you say, the industry and the technology is to produce vaccine, etc. And this is this dichotomy and divergent opinion that if you deal with the problem at the source, then you don't need to get this information so much at the international level to be able to react, because this is only about reaction and response and being able to access countermeasure. And so I think the question of what do you share within the PAPs is very much linked to what are you going to use the data for. And the question that needs to be changed at this level, so we are a strong advocate of changing the way of thinking in terms of pathogen and benefit sharing access, is the question is not how do we get access to the data and the information, but how do we engage with the people that have the data and information so that not only they benefit from it, but the whole of society and the international community will benefit from it. So that would be my comment on that. But maybe Nina, you'll have more practical comments on the PAPS itself.
Nina, would you like to share? I think she's having some internet issues, but maybe we can go back to it later in the second part of the Q&A. But for now, I'd like to also highlight this question from Olive. So she was asking if you can share some strategies or role of partners like Prezode that support community co-creation of One Health policies and programs, or participation in One Health governance, especially now with the implementation of the pandemic agreement at the country level?
Okay, so I will start more from a success story in the field that is going to inform the policy, because I think this is really the point. So just to give you an example that will also speak to all of you. So Presod is supporting strongly partners, researcher and technical implementers in the field to develop and co-develop community-based surveillance in the One Health approach. So we've got success. So based on field experience and what has been done in different countries, Presod is developing a step-by-step guidelines on how to do so. How can you contextualize the approach to each specific context to be able to build a system that is relevant for the people that are using it. So basically what it is looking at, it's looking at a system that will prevent emerging risk, but not only, it's also addressing the needs of the people that are making the systems happening. And it's also building on existing work, because the idea is not to redo the wheel. It's working on understanding the needs and constraints of the community that is living the health event. And they have needs. They need to understand better the risk. They need to understand how to detect it better, report it better, and acting fast on it. So our members and partners, national institutions, research, but also NGOs, are co-developing the system with them through participatory workshop and training and local actions. So they're building up the protocols that will fit them, fit their needs, fit their constraints, and also link up to national systems. So the authorities at local and national levels are engaged to be able to link the two levels. We've got success stories in Madagascar, for example, where the system was developed by local NGOs, very confidential, but then we were able also to make it more visible through the Presod project, and the MOH has been endorsing that pilot, and I want to expand it nationally. We've got other example in Gabon, and it was a collaboration with FAO actually, where the system was built with the Hunter Association, so it was really led by the Ministry of Environment and Forest. And now it's being uptaken by the Ministry of Health to strengthen their community-based surveillance nationwide. So this is the kind of example that we can share with you. And then the other one, which is more internationally, and I've already mentioned it, is supporting CSOs and NGOs such as 4POS and WCS and all these NGOs that have been instrumental in advocating and being there at every session of the negotiation to really make sure that the essential elements regarding prevention and wellness will not be dropped out of the pandemic accord. And without them, I think that would have been the case. So there is it is possible to be impactful at all levels when you are representing the communities. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Marisa. So basically, there's no one-sized approach or strategy. So we have to really consider the context of the country that we're working on, and also be sensitive to the needs of the implementers as well as the community. So if you can also share, if you have documents regarding the different case studies, please feel free to also share it to our participants later on. And I'm also personally looking forward to reading some of them. Marion, would you like to add to that, or Nina? No?
I agree, and I have to say that no piece of the puzzle would work without the other. So, for example, what Marisa was saying, we were in Geneva negotiating with the member states, but we wouldn't have succeeded had we not gotten the essentials from the ground, from NGOs working with the communities, from scientists, from experts. So the essentials were created by people who are practitioners. And this is the kind of collaboration that we will need moving forward. We need to think about it as one holistic strategy where we all do our part in the pieces of the puzzle.
Excellent point. That just highlights the interdependency as we actually move forward implementing One Health. All right. Okay, so I see Olive raising her hand. Olive, would you like to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Maritza and team, for responding to that question. And for me, I think it's around if we can have a place where, or if you have this on your website, I think this is very crucial for people to really know if we are going to be participating in One Health, how does that look like? even if it's in a form of a guidance, a guideline, if that is already not been developed, putting that together and then taking civil society and communities through that process. Probably that's something that we could work with together with APCASO or ACT Asia Pacific or ACT Africa. We'll develop a guideline and see how we can get this information to communities. As you note, I think in the next session, we were supposed to have cell one where we are supporting the communities participate in the one development of the One Health strategy. So if you already have that information, I think if we could package and share that, that would be great. Thanks. Back over to you.
All right, thank you. So we're actually building our own community of practice here as we're going through the webinar, but hopefully it gets formalized through what Marian presented earlier. Now, I'd like to, since Marisa highlighted the importance of local implementers, I'd like to shift already the conversation to our next session. So our next session will be a country sharing by one of Prizode's implementing partners, specifically Vietnam. Community Development Initiatives, or SCDI, a Vietnamese NGO whose vision is a world where every human being live in harmony with one another and with nature. SCDI key approach is to engage with and empower marginalized and vulnerable communities so that they can take charge of their own lives and contribute to the society. So now I present to you Dr. Juan Quat, who will be sharing their experience in Vietnam.
Yeah.
Over to you, Juan.
Thank you very much, Ajay, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I think my presentation would fit very nicely in our conversation because I'm going to share with you what are we going to do in Vietnam at community level about One Health. It also show maybe somehow address Peter's question comment about civil society and community. So we would say we are an NGO, but we are working closely with communities. So we don't really have a border. We don't say us NGO and them community, but we work together. Of course we have some advantage, but the community have their own advantage as well. So we work together as a very, very close partner. I also would like to say that One Health has been the concept that our organization has been interested in many years, for the last many years. However, we could see that it had been difficult to operationalize. So as you can see that some government, including my own government in Vietnam, have set up the One Health platform, but the collaboration in order for it to operationalize, to make it concrete, is not that straightforward. So we think that it's good to start to work, and by working, by doing things, we will learn. And luckily that result has been there, trying different model here and there, and there's a number of has a lot of experience and a couple of guidelines that can help us to start with. So let me now, can you have to share my slide just to avoid me talking for too long, please.
Would you share screen for you, Juan?
Yeah, can you show the slide? Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. So my presentation, I name it, I call it Translating One Health Concept to Community Action, because we talk about concept for a long time, and also principle, are good, but now is the time for action. So we are lucky to be a part of a consortium, the project called PREACT 3, and particularly the phase for Vietnam, and some of the Southeast Asia country called and Africa, SECA Vietnam. Next slide, please. So in this presentation, I'm going to do like 1.5 minutes video introduction of SCDI so that you know who we are. And then I share with you the project that that we are participating in. So that is our concrete action to translate the One Health concept into the action in the community. Next slide, please. And can you play the video? Yeah. Yeah, so that's a short introduction of SCDI. So just in a nutshell, that we work very closely with the community. Next slide, please. So let me just quickly introduce the project that we are a part of. The overall objective of the project is to implement an integrated One Health approach to assess, mitigate, and manage zoonotic disease, antimicro resistant, and environmental risks in Vietnam, and with a focus on improving the health and resilience of agriculture community. We are going to work in 2 provinces. One's in the northern mountain area, and the other one is in Mekong Delta. So these are the agriculture community, and they are high risk. Next slide, please. So the key component, there are 4 key components of the project. One is a risk characterization. It's to mean to identify the risk, such as the germ, the fungal, the virus, the bacteria that can be zoonotic or can be at risk for human, animal, or nature. That will be done by the research institutes. The second is risk mitigation. So how can we reduce the risk? The third is on early warning and community-based surveillance. I think you already, Marisa, Marion, and Naina have already mentioned some of these component in the overall One Health pandemic preparedness approach. And the fourth component of the project is to build the network of One Health, to strengthen the One Health network, to build the capacity, strengthen capacity of community and other partner, and strengthening the partnership between different partners in One Health. And among this, in terms of networking, we are also aiming at having the community become a part of the national One Health platform. Next, please. So we will, the community will actively participate in the last three activity: risk mitigation, early warning, and partnership platform building. For the risk characterization, the community will participate in as a consultation in a the fashion of consultation, provide information and feedback for the research design and result. In terms of risk mitigation, we realize that the One Health concept have not well understood by the community. It's still new to a lot of people in the community. So the first thing we need to do is to raise community awareness on One Health. We will conduct a training of trainer for community representative, and then support community-led activities. So the community-led activity could be like to have a TikTok challenge, to have a community meeting, to have a play, to have a Zalo group, which is our local communication network similar to WhatsApp, or Facebook, etc. So that is one is to raise awareness on One Health, make sure that the community understood the concept of One Health and appreciate it and consider it as an important part of the community life. The second is to promote One Health clinic. So in the project, there's a idea of developing One Health clinic, the clinic both for human and animal, so that so we hope that the community work with the community for the community to understand the approach of One Health clinic and support it. And we during the previous section, you heard a lot about co-development. So we work with community to work with other partners to co-develop and pilot community-led intervention. So with the community-led intervention, they be also have a regular monitoring and review to adapt, to adopt, to revise, to update, in order to have a model of intervention that work well for the community. Next slide, please. Excuse me. The other component is about early warning and community-based surveillance. Other presenter already spoke about that already, but you could see that early warning is really important part of prevention and as well as community-based surveillance. We with other partner, we will have a work with community to conduct training on the necessarily knowledge and skill that enable the community to monitor local risk and issue. So the community is at the front line. We know that they are the one who live One Health, but they may or may not have necessarily some of the knowledge, or they may not have adequate knowledge and skill to monitor risk and issue. So that is the training will help to consolidate their knowledge and skill. The second on the community-based surveillance is to set up a surveillance mechanism. So it has to be a simple, locally adapted reporting and feedback system that allow timely response and promote community ownership. So it has to be easy, simple enough so that community can own it and not dependent on some high-tech mechanism somewhere, some big machine, some sophisticated mechanism, but it had to be simple so that the community can own it. In under this, we also in the project also established a multi-channel information sharing system. So it multi-channel so that we make sure that at least one would work. People would get information, and it be a two-way. It's early warning and response, but from the community to the authority and from the authority to the community. So it's a two-way. Of course, they need to have a training for community on early warning and response, what to do in terms of warning and response. And we plan to have an annual mentee stakeholder review meeting. This is new. So it's really important that we review it to learn from it, but also to share the experience and improve this system. Next one, please. So we all agree that the role of community and civil society is important, but everyone is important. Government is important, academia is important, researchers are important. So now we need to work together, policymaker, scientists, community manager need to work together. So what we try to do as an NGO is to be a broker, basically. So we try to work with the community to create space for the community to make the two sides understand each other. So policymaker and scientists to understand the community, because at the beginning, they need to have some facilitation. So we consider ourselves almost like interpreter. So from the community language to the policy language, from the policy scientific language to the community language, so that both sides understand each other and can work together, because each one have their advantage and their shortfall. So if we can work together, it would be the partnership is very beneficial to everyone, but people don't necessarily don't necessarily have a mechanism to make it work. So what we try to do is to facilitate that partnership so that it works. So that would include training, mentoring. We facilitate dialogue, so have a policymaker and researcher sit down with the community to discuss, organize consultation and meeting. So in order to strengthen knowledge and skill of community, but also increase the interaction between different sides. So what we really hope is that community understand One Health, embrace One Health, meaningfully participate in One Health, and take One Health in their hand, because they are the one who live One Health. So that's about it, and would be happy to learn from you and hear from you. Thank you very much. Our contact is at the last slide. So if you, yeah.
Thank you, Juan, for that presentation. Inspiring story from Vietnam. Specifically, I'm very much interested on the different demand generation activities that you're doing for One Health using organic approaches to the community. It's also interesting how you discussed the integrated services through the One Health clinic, as well as the community approaches on surveillance, early warning systems, and response. And I think it was also interesting how you described the role of civil society as the facilitator in terms of creating those guiding coalitions that would push One Health forward. So thank you, Juan, for that presentation. So now I'd like to turn over the floor to Paul Bangura, who will share their initiatives in Sierra Leone. Over to you, Paul.
Good morning to everybody. How are you doing? Are you getting me? Are you getting me? Hello?
Yes,
Yes, Paul, we are getting you.
Okay,
yes, Paul, we are getting you.
Yes. So sorry. Actually, Dr. Lako, who is our consultant, was supposed to have done a presentation, but unfortunately, he reported that he is not well and he is unable to be part of this conversation. But thank you very much. Let me just share very quickly our experience working with stakeholders and communities regarding One Health. In the first place, civil society organizations are very vital to the implementation of One Health approach. The ability to engage communities, advocate for inclusive policies, facilitate collaboration across sectors, and provide education can significantly enhance the effectiveness of One Health initiatives. Over the past 1 year plus, our work has been around engaging communities, building capacity of community groups around pandemic preparedness and response, and also inclusive One Health. So supported by the Global Fund. So we have conducted a lot of capacity training, first and foremost, to equip our community CSOs, coalition members to actually understand what is One Health and the concept of people as well. So what we have done is to also engage stakeholders to create space, because the national framework on One Health, when we looked at it, when they talk about community, it was actually focusing on community health workers, chiefs, and traditional leaders. So specifically, you cannot find how CSO communities are connected, but because we have engaged the ministry, have engaged them over the period to open space so that CSOs communities can actually evolve in the implementation of One Health, because when it comes in terms of community awareness, education, community mobilization, community-led actions, it rests actually on the hands of civil society to actually take those messages out. So because of the engagement we have done, we have been given a maximum space, in the conversation around One Health. And as I speak to you, there are One Health platform. There's a framework already, a national framework on One Health. And if Dr. Lago would have presented, you'd have seen all of this one. But as a framework, but also there are categories of community inclusion. So which means we have been considered greatly to actually participate in the implementation of One Health approaches, and as well as PPR issues. Let me give an example. Because of those engagements we have had in the past, now we have been included in the Mpox fight. We are now part of the National Public Health Agency, and then very recently we are called as a coalition, as CSOs, to submit activities so that we can go in the forefront to mobilize our communities, religious leaders, in terms of addressing and curtailing the spread of Mpox across district. So this has shown that our engagement in the past has not gone fruitile, but it has yielded maximum impact, because we have included recently, we have a consultant, Dr. Lako, actually did a lot of work around that, studied the National Action Plan for Security document. There were so many gaps, because of our engagement. So a lot of inclusion in terms of community participation. CSOs are now there. So very recently, there was a review that was done on the National Action Plan for Security. So a lot of consideration around community. So that's why we are now part of all of those efforts. So I think what we have done in the past is yielding fruit, and then it's very good for us. Yeah, but what we need is we need as CSOs communities more capacity, especially at the global framework level. We need that kind of capacity to be built, to be able to understand all of those global framework, and also to be more effective in engaging in the conversation of One Health, in Sierra Leone. But at its stand, there's a tremendous effort that has been done in terms of advancing One Health. There is now interconnectivity of entities. Like I speak to you, we have now those entities like Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, the environmental agencies, and those that are connected, working around humans and animals and the environment. Those platforms are very effective now, and I think CSOs and communities are very much aware of that, and then we are part of those conversations. But there is need for more collaboration. There is need for more collaboration, CSOs and government. There's need for more support to build capacity of CSOs, because we are those that will always go to at community level to raise awareness, to mobilize. We are trusted agents to mobilize and bring those informations that will create change at community level. So I will stop there. Thank you very much for that opportunity. But I think there is great, tremendous efforts on ground, and Dr. Lako has actually helped also, to pave a way. He was like a doorway for us to enter, to engage with some of those entities, government entities, for inclusion of communities and CSOs, especially our coalition on pandemic preparedness, to actually engage extensively on One Health, and then the pandemic preparedness and response, understanding how the Gs and the NAVs and the SPLAS actually operate as well. So that has been very tremendous. So thank you very much for that opportunity. I want to end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for that sharing. I remember your presentation in your country sharing in one of our previous webinars, and I think this is a good build-up to what you presented before. So now you're also expanding it to One Health. It would have been interesting to also hear from Dr. Lako, but I think you summarized it perfectly well. So thank you, Paul, for that sharing. So I see that there are some chats here. So now, probably since we're around 81 in the room, we'd like to also hear from our participants. Karine actually raised some very interesting questions in the chat. She was asking how much are One Health and pandemic prevention important for you? So maybe you can probably add the phrase in the chat box on how important you think One Health and pandemic prevention is. Or you can also probably also rate it probably 1 to 10. 10 would be the highest, 1 would be quite low. So if you have some thoughts, you can add them in our chat. So I think with the sharing of our speakers today, it really allowed us to appreciate the concept of One Health and pandemic preparedness. All right, Karine, would you like to say something?
Yeah. Thank you very much, RJ, and thanks a lot to Vietnam and Sierra Leone for sharing their experience. But I just want to highlight what you said, right? I mean, we had here 2 countries coming and saying what they're doing. This being said, I'm sure you're doing plenty, right? So the idea here is not at all to make presentations, right, is really to engage with all of you. So how relevant is that to you? How much does it speak to you? What are you doing on community-based surveillance, on One Health, pandemic prevention? If you find it relevant, how can we best support, right, any challenge that you have? And as I wrote also, part of Prezo's work is to enhance the dialogue between scientists, between civil society, society in general, and policymakers, for example, on the pandemic agreement. So, we're really keen to engage with you, right? So you have the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Karine. As Karine mentioned, please feel free to raise your hand and also put in the chat your inputs regarding the sharings that we've heard from today. So Peter here says that One Health concept is very important, as we have seen that we are in the century where pathogens move from other animal species to humans. All right. Thank you, Peter, for that sharing. Idrisa said that excellent presentations, great presentations. Thank you, teams. Lizzie, would you like to share?
Yes, real quick. I understand that, I mean, I appreciate the fact that we have a treaty and everything, and we're talking about One Health, but a lot of communities and civil societies are still under the impression that animal health is animal health, human health is human health, and the planet has its own people to look after it. But we're talking about the three of them being combined, and we're looking at it from a holistic point of view. I'm just more worried about where communities are and where we are in terms of discussion, because One Health, to be honest, has always been a WHO agenda and a high level advocacy issue. It still hasn't trickled down to communities. And I mean, I appreciate the work that Resort is doing. They have an amazing 101 on One Health, where you get to understand how a simple farmer fits in the team, in the whole equation. So I'm just asking the organizers, how are we going to make sure that these technical terms are now broken down into a language that communities understand?
All right. Thank you, Lizzie, for that question. I think this is the perfect time to call my friends, Marisa, Marion, if you're still available, as well as Juan and Paul, to help us answer that question. So how do we actually break down the silos of animal, environmental, and human health? And maybe also Nina. And for our participants, also please feel free to raise your hand if you want to respond to any of the points. I see.
Jay, can I ask maybe if we could get more questions so that we can use the time remaining to answer to 3-4 questions? Thank you.
Yeah, all right. So we'll proceed first with the question of Lizzie, and then if there are other questions, we can take them on. One, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Lizzie. It's a very important question, and I think it's many people have the same question. But I think as a presenter before me have mentioned repeatedly, Marisa, Mario, and Nina, is One Health have to be bottom up. One Health shouldn't be top down. There are discussion in Geneva, there's discussion in Paris, but the realities happen in the community because the people in the community are the one who live One Health. The people who sit in a meeting room at One Health Assembly in Geneva, well, everybody live One Health, but the people in the community are every day with animal, with the environment, with the nature. And I think that we as a community and civil society shouldn't wait until people from Geneva tell us what to do. We should take our responsibility as well, and we should take ownership of One Health by doing our One Health approach. Learn. I mean, I guess at this point there's no real textbook to say step 1, step 2, step 3, and then you will have a result 1, 2, 3. We have to learn, but the community is in the front line, and community should be the one who be in charge of it and start to do our pilot experiment, start to build our model in order to meet the top down. I think we need to meet halfway. The big policy, global policy, and national policy are important, but it can only meaningful. It will only be meaningful if things happen on the ground. So I think so just to say that we need to start. Just another point I would like to share is that because our organization is working with the support of the Global Fund. The Global Fund is the biggest donor that work on community system strengthening. So I've been working on this space for the last 30 years, and the Global Fund is the one who have invested greatly in community system strengthening. So I think of course, other community, other system can also and should also work on One Health, but in particularly the communities that have benefit from the investment of the Global Fund, it is now the time for us to go beyond the 3 disease, beyond human health, and start to work on One Health. Thank you.
All right. Powerful reminder from Juan. So the concept of One Health is not something that is devolved from the international space. So we should take a greater ownership of the concept and also see how it actually pans out at the local level so that it can also inform international discussions. I see Marisa raising her hand. Please go
Yes,
ahead.
no, I just wanted to, and I will answer more than one question at the same time. I wanted to emphasize that One else is happening in the field and has been happened for millenniums because we are learning that from indigenous communities that have been working all the time in harmony with nature. So this is also a learning curve for the experts and the scientists. We have created silos, policies have created silos, legal agreement, legal instruments have created silos. So we just need to think about that this way. So basically, we need to revert to what is normal, and farmers are members of communities. They've got kids that get sick, they get malaria, they breed animals that get sick. When we look at the community-based surveillance in Gabon, hunters have taken their own responsibility to manage their resources. They want to manage the forestry because they live on from these resources, and they realize that not only these resources is giving them income so they can bring their kids to school, they can feed, but it's also a risk and they need to protect themselves and their family. So I think this is how we should take it and present it at the global level. This is not a new concept coming up from the top. This is just what we should all be doing because this is the way that we will live in harmony with our environment, and we will be able to sustain actions in time because this is not that costly. This is just common sense. And of course, there needs to be some investment to really re-implement that and support what has been destroyed. But this is not so new, and that's how we should really showcase it and advocate for it.
All right. Thank you, Marisa. Due to the interest of time, we'll take in a few more questions, and then we'll call it a day for the webinar. Rachel, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, RJ. My name is Rachel, and my question is around currently what we are doing in the African region in respect of the Copper Sea project. And so we are working in 5 African countries. We are working in Kenya, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Nigeria, and then Cameroon. So these countries have understood the various PPR processes and what goes on in respect of the policies, the JE, and the NAFs. But then my question is that what and how would be the linkage between these processes and then One Health? And also broadly, this question may be for PRISOD specifically, what can be done at the regional level in ensuring that these countries we are working with are also participating in the various One Health policies that are in their countries? Because sometimes, to be honest with you, it can be mind-boggling if you, regarding this project, if you need to come up with things to do. And I know that sometimes the country partners do not understand how to go around the process, basically because they do not have information. And we know that the whole idea of Copper Sea projects is to ensure that we are being involved, communities and CSOs are being involved in the various policies in terms of One Health or pandemic preparedness at the country level. So I want to seek your expertise and your advice on this. How can we integrate One Health and pandemic preparedness in these processes? And also for PRISOD, how can we collaborate on the regional level in respect of One Health to ensure that we are fulfilling what the countries need? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. I'd like to also piggyback one of the questions in the chat, who is asking about the role of the private sector in this One Health. All right. So over to our panelists. Anyone who would like to answer Rachel's question?
I can start and then let my colleague complete. One thing that I have discovered, I'm coming originally from the public health field. I was working on pediatric vaccines in my early curriculum. Then I moved to veterinary for epidemiology and surveillance. And when I started working with the Global Fund and the community-led engagement and monitoring, I discovered this issue of indicators, legislation, IHR was so prominent in the discussion at the community level, which I'm still trying to figure out why and why this is the end instead of being just a tool for monitoring the impact and the end. Sorry, maybe it's a bit provocative, but I was even a bit shocked because there's a lot of training going on, training the community level on how to address these GE, SPARS indicators, which I think is very confusing for all of them. And I'm not sure this is needed. That's not answering your question, but I think it's needed for the higher global level, but is it really needing to prevent emerging risks, to prevent pandemics? I'm not that sure, but that's another debate. Those indicators are evolving, so that is the good news. Beyond that, there's been a lot of discussion at the WHO level. They've made IHR indicators evolve towards more integrated approach. This is not sufficient. This is not enough, and we are working on that and reviewing it. In the Pandemic Fund, they've also developed a lot of, and I've been involved in that, indicators to be able to integrate One Health and monitor One Health and PPR interventions in those international legal frameworks. So this is happening. This is happening. We're not there yet, but we're working on it. And this is also what PRISOD is pushing. We're pushing at very different level, engaging a lot of experts in that have the expertise to be able to do that. So that's for the IHR and the legal thing. For the regional actions, so this is another, we are really working at the different level, local, national, regional, and international. At the regional level, the different programs we have, including the one that was presented by Juan, is really promoting a network of One Health platform at the regional level. So that means that the different countries and One Health platform in countries can talk together, share experience, expertise, and strengthen each other's as a country-to-country collaboration. This is happening in Africa, in the different regions, Southern Africa, Eastern Africa. There is a big program called COISA, and this is very instrumental in being able to do that. And there is other programs starting or being implemented in other regions. So, I mean, if we can really talk more about that in another conversation. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Marisa. Anyone else would like to add?
Yes, I just wanted to point. Can I go ahead?
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I just wanted to also point out that as we talk about One Health, we should also not forget the relationship with AMR. As we know, antimicrobial resistance, as we know, as the populations increase, also the demand for food and the use of chemical and pesticides that are embedded into human food chain also is a driver of antimicrobial resistance. So we need also to incorporate AMR in the One Health as an issue of that introduces IPs into the human body. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Peter, for that comment. I saw the panelists nodding their heads when you were talking about the inclusion of AMR. So, yeah, go ahead, Juan.
No, I just think that is the question about, there are two questions I saw on the chat, and one you already mentioned is about the private sector, and the other question about the CLM, community-led monitoring. So just want to comment on this. It's not an answer, but but I think you are, Javier, you are right. Private sector is very, very important, and they are the one who produce a lot of goods. They are the one who provide a lot of services. So, and they are part of the community, part of the society. So engagement with private sector, I think, is really important. But there could be a different way to engagement with private sector. But first of all, is the government and community as a customer can really help to shape the market, can help to shape the help the private sector to pave their way. In terms of the production, in terms of services, but also I think it's would be really, really important and beneficial to engage with private sector in the dialogue, in the conversation. And to some extent to policy making, of course, with the attention of conflict of interest. But I think it is very important point about private sector. Relating to community-led monitoring or COM, COM in recent year has really picked up. There's a community has been trained, has been capacitated to be able to do the monitoring, the community-led monitoring, and not only monitoring as collecting data, but also to give feedback and to use that to enter the policy dialogue and into the shaping the program. So these experience are really important. And when we work on the community-based surveillance, that is also we bring in some of the experience on the community-led monitoring in order to that serve as a important base, important foundation for the community-based surveillance and monitoring. So just want to share my thought on this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Juan. And if the participants are interested to know more about led monitoring, you
Yes,
can
yes. Hello.
the YouTube recording of our previous lessons. All right. So just a quick one. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, RJ. Yeah. Just want to raise something very quickly. There's an experience we had here. CSOs and communities does not have a comprehensive understanding on the One Health. We are more focused on the PPR interventions. So is it possible to get a created content for CSOs understanding, on One Health, so that this can be able to empower them to ask the necessary questions, to engage, to contribute? Because sometimes in most of those conversations, CSOs will talk less because of so many technical issues around the One Health. So it's good to have a created content like the PPR intervention. So it was very clear. So we were able to build capacities around understanding the concept, and that was why the engagement were very simple. So I'm just submitting a recommendation on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, for that input. Anyone who would like to add on to what Paul said? But I think everyone agrees that we need more capacity building in terms of One Health so that it can be better translated at the local level. Olive, just a quick one before we close.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that just to reiterate what Paul has said, even for the team to understand PPR, it's because we started off with a training, and after the training, then we've developed learning materials, have this community of practice where we've had several discussions and deliberations, and that's why the team that is here is able to understand, what PPR is all about, and even engage at country level, even in the JEEs, the NAPS process that Rachel was talking about. And we need to do something similar as well. And I think that's the question Karine is asking, and which I had started also asking. What can we do better to really unpack One Health? Are there materials that we need to do? Are there a series of webinars that we need to do? And I think that's the question that we're asking. What else, Paul, should we be doing to unpack One Health further so that communities understand and are able to engage? Who are the partners at country level that we can engage? And I think there was a point as well that it's not at national level, but even at subnational level. what are some of the key things and key elements? And if you can put those things in the chat, that would really appreciate. Thanks. Back to you, RJ. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Olive. So Olive gave us some points to reflect on. So again, please enter in the chat your answers so that we can our colleagues from Global Fund or Prezode can also use it in terms of planning their activities. So with that, I'd like to invite everyone to give a round of applause to our speakers. Excellent presentations from Marisa Per. Right, please give her a round of applause virtually, as well as our colleague from FAO, Marion Salos. Thank you for sharing your insights, as well as, of course, our friend from Vietnam, Juan Quat, who also presented their presentation. And also to Paul, who also shared their experience in Sierra Leone. All right, so I'd like, before we close, hopefully everyone is still okay to take a photo. So please open your cameras if you're comfortable, and then Jeff will take the photo for us. All right, so I see people turning on their cameras. Thank you so much. And thank you for your active participation. I think this is one of the most interactive sessions we've had for lessons.
We have 3 panels, so I'll just give some time to open. Okay. I think we're good. All right. First panel, 1, 2, 3, smile. Oh, sorry. I'll do it again. 1, 2, 3. Cute. Next panel, 1, 2, 3. And last one, smile, 1, 2, 3. Right. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, thank you, Jeff. So I also placed in the chat the evaluation form. Please do answer the evaluation form so that we can improve how we conduct the session, and also so that we can send you the presentation materials once we get permission from our speakers. And if you're interested, you can also join the WhatsApp community group so that we can continue the conversation and also the collaboration. So you can scan this QR code and it will lead you to the invitation link for WhatsApp. All right, so I think that's it. Thank you everyone for joining us for this session. Thank you to our speakers, our translators, as well as our colleagues who have helped us in technical preparation for this webinar. All right, so we'll close this session in a few.
Bye-bye. Thank you
Thank you
so
very
much.
much.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Some, Windy, our translators. Thank you to Prezode and Sirad for helping us organize this webinar.
Congratulations to the organizer.
Really, they
You
do
got
the Philippines.
Let's just give some time for the others to do the evaluation and
Jeff, maybe we can just put them in the waiting room.
yeah.
Yeah, you can